Time to lay up some parts. And we're back with another episode of Sandstone Speed Shed. The ridiculous quest to build a land speed racing motorcycle out of a bunch of trash. Should have called it Forky. Which segues into exactly what I'm doing here. Making some plate parts for the do-it-yourself Earl's leading link fork that's going on this bike. More plasma cut steel than you can shake a stick at. And this will all get ground into shape. I'll drill some cheese holes in it later on. It has begun. This is my welding setup for the evening. So this channel is turning out to be a lot of TIG welding. I didn't expect it to be that way. But because I'm making this entire bike from scratch, minus the frame and the engine, this is how it's turning out. I don't really claim to be a great welder, but I'm making do with what I got. Behold the power of cheese. This thing would make a hell of a bludgeon. So these forks had a couple of parts. Obviously there is a lower brace and then there's an upper brace. One mounts the shock to the fork. The other one mounts the lower axle loop to the stanchions. So just a couple more bright lights and we'll get back to some unscripted commentary. Making the swing arm was fun. This, not so much. Obviously, I filmed some of the plasma cutting, and then more of the plasma cutting, and then some of the grinding, and then more of the grinding, and eventually I was like, I just gotta get through this and not babysit a camera. I have the forks assembled in a vise because there's more welding to do. This entire bike is a welding project. I'm not building a motorcycle, I'm making things out of metal at this point. Actually, most of what I'm doing up front, if I get it wrong, it's going to be bad. So I'm contractually obligated to say that this is dangerous and stupid and nobody should do it. So I'm really glad about nobody. So today's welding jobs, going to be putting beads on four different rows of beads on these upper shock mounts. And welding. It's like magic. You push the pedal, and the lights come on, and then the metal starts to melt. So, building this bike has forced me out of my comfort zone as a welder. When you go to school, you get to go to your little workstation and, set things in a fixture and get comfortable and keep practicing until you do your best. That went about as well as could be expected. At least for me. I hope it was good for you too. Now that things are welded together and the lower triple is captured on the stanchions, decided to put it in the bike, take a look at what I had just done, and figure out my next plan. But first I wanted to grab the springs, which came off of a Bombardier ATV, and they are absolute monsters. I just need to make the hoop and put the axle on next. But not without looking at the whole bike. This guy right here has a 3D printer, and we're going to use it to make parts for the bike. First thing we made off the 3D printer was this rear shock reservoir support. Printing in ABS was a challenge, but it came out okay. It's looking like a machine. Anyway, we've got this bucket here that should be large enough for a Shore lithium battery. So the 3D print slice looked promising, and I really hoped that this part would be the one. Unfortunately, after many hours of watching it do this, it turned out to be a complete failure. The ABS warped, the sizes were wrong, so we went back to the drawing board with a
panel design that we thought we would also print in ABS and glue together, since the scraps that we just made went into a vat of acetone to become putty. And since a few of my followers actually called me out on the surface finish of the reservoir mount, I used the ABS putty to smooth out the surface and weld things together a little better. This panel box printed a lot better in PLA and was at least enough to make sure that the part was going to fit. So this is the test model of the battery box. And it is a little cramped in there. Could have made it a bit longer, could have made it a little narrower. C'est la vie.
And we're making a set of dishes for the rear wheel.
My buddy wanted to take the lead on this particular fabrication job, so I let him. Made my life a bit easier. Actually really glad to have a second pair of hands around the shop, as well as this man's resources. He plans on coming to the races with me, so even though he may not ride the bike, might just end up being a crew chief, because he'll be the only other person around that knows this bike as intimately as I do. With the rear wheel covered, we can move on and work on the rest of the bike.
Today, we sit. Well, we build stuff to sit on. Yeah, I've already cut a couple lengths of metal. That should be enough for my butt to be happy. And these are going to have to get coked on the tube notcher and attached to the frame right there. And then I need to start building the motor. So this is becoming, it's looking like it's going to take a while to finish. Over to the drill press. And that goes in there like that. Remove the safety tag. Put a couple drops on it. Fire up.
Thanks for watching this episode of Sandstone Speed Shed.
Whoever I let talk me into this is getting a beating. That person was me, by the way.